Hi, this is Eden Gordon Hill, and welcome again to another special episode with Defenders Live. And I am here today with my dear friend Barbara from Harlem and also her daughter Bebe. I have had the honor to meet them about a year ago, and we were fighting the CRT movement in Northern Virginia, and that's how we got to meet. Barbara, thank you for being here tonight. I'm so
Thank
glad
you for
to have
having
you.
me, and thank you very much.
Well, as you can see, I am featuring your book on this episode,
Yes,
Escaping the Racism of Low Expectations. And we met because of your book. And we met
yes, we do.
because of you fighting this woke cult in our school systems of really pushing the CRT and transgender agenda. So I would love for you to pipe in. I'm going to stop talking. I want to hear your story about your book. And I also want to talk about what really led you to this ongoing fight.
Well, what led me to this ongoing fight is my love for America.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a registered Democrat, but I saw over the course of years, being a member of many Democratic clubs and all of that they were not pushing America's agenda. They were pushing an agenda of slavery, enslavement of Black people, and
Mm-hmm.
making us feel as if there was no hope for us in America. And like I said, being a member of many Democratic clubs,
Mm-hmm.
I went from one to the other, and I heard the same message.
Mm-hmm.
And what really struck me was that I grew up in a church. I was familiar with the term love thy neighbor. So
Right.
it wasn't possible for them to have me hate people because
Mm-hmm.
of the color of their skin.
Mm-hmm.
It bothered with my personhood. So I had to come to many conclusions that I could not accept their platform. I could not accept their narrative and love God and love my country. This
Mm.
book, Escaping the Racism of Low Expectation, is it was motivated by my God, my country, and my conscience. My conscience didn't sit well with me around people that constantly said I had to hate people.
Mm-hmm.
I was not comfortable, and my conscience would not let me be that way. So I really changed courses. It was during the election of Mayor Rudy Giuliani that
Mm.
I first started working
Mm-hmm.
for a Republican campaigner,
Mm-hmm.
even as a Democrat,
Mm-hmm.
as a candidate. And I was proud of the fact that he was elected mayor,
Yes.
even though he was a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
That opened up my eyes. It opened up my whole world. And it
Mm-hmm.
made me realize I have to be honest to
Mm-hmm.
my conscience. I have to
Mm-hmm.
be honest to my God and
Right.
do what's right for America, regardless of the
Mm-hmm.
color of my skin.
Tell me about what you have been doing since your book came out. I read your book,
Yes.
and I will tell you, I almost fell out of my chair a couple times. And just how you are this inspiring woman and what you have done as basically a single mom
Yes.
raising your children on your own in
Yes.
Florida during a
Yes.
certain time period. Can you talk to that time period in your life that you referred to in your book? That really struck me.
Well, I saw a lot of changes in Florida, like throughout America. We used to go to Florida to visit when I was a little girl.
Mhm,
I went to school down there, at elementary school, I believe 2 years.
mhm,
I saw Jim Crow. I
mhm,
saw the fountains that said colored and white. I
mhm,
saw all of that. But when I went down there in the 70s with
mhm,
my children, to be near my mother and my grandmother, I didn't see any of that. So I have lived to see progress in America.
Right.
I have lived to see changes in America for the better. And you'll notice in my book, my mother never had us go to the back of a restaurant.
Mm.
My mother would start talking French, and we walked through front doors all of our lives because they didn't know we were American blacks at the time. Very proud of my mother, but I
That's
never went through a back door. I never drank from a fountain that said colored, and I'm still alive to even say that I had those experiences. I love
wait,
America.
wait a second. Weren't you shot at a couple times?
Yes, I was shot by a KKK. Yes.
Okay. Tell us a
A
little bit
member of
about
the
that.
KKK. Yes.
Yeah,
I was
that
shot.
is, I think that was one of the times I fell out of my chair.
Yes. I was shot twice. My brother was shot, and we survived it because that's why I believe in the Second Amendment. I
Mhm.
ran to the car, retrieved my gun, and I shot him too.
Mm.
And that saved, I believe, my brother's life, my life, and my children's lives. And
Mhm.
one thing about it, if you're armed, the bad guy sees that you're armed, they will give up or they'll run away.
Right.
This guy who shot us, once I shot him, and my mother drove up. I don't know how she knew we were there. And
Mhm.
I started asking her for the shotgun. When he heard me talking about a shotgun, he
Yeah.
said, I give.
Yeah.
That was the end of the gunfight.
Mm.
But yes, I do. I'm a strong believer in the Second Amendment because if I didn't have my gun, God only knows what would have
Mhm.
happened.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay,
Yes.
so you have highlighted some really hot button items that the media, big media, and our White House like to change they like to do a spin cycle over and over and over again and basically change the topics. And one of the articles I had sent to you guys was about the vice president. They continually give her things to do, but at the end of the day, she is not doing them. And
Incompetent. Yes.
thank you. I was going to let you say it. I had some other words, but that's a good one. That's a good one. And
Yes.
I
Yes.
I know that you and BB, let's talk about your radio show too. You have a radio show every Saturday on the Blue Network. I love the Blue Network. It is pro law enforcement, pro
Yes, it
Second
is.
Amendment, and live every Saturday.
Yes.
And in that, your commentary talking about the faith of this nation,
Yes.
what is happening to our culture in our schools, what is happening on the streets of our cities.
Yes.
You too have an amazing audience. And I want you to share with our audience on Defenders Live about your radio show and some of the hot topics that we just touched upon, and
Yes.
really what the audience is telling you.
Okay. All right. I'm going to let Miss Diamond answer some of these questions.
Oh,
Sure.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us on. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
But our urban story started about almost 10 years ago,
Yes.
and what we're dedicated to doing is speaking the truth.
Yes.
And speaking out on issues that impact people at a local, state, and federal level.
Amen.
Mhm.
We do not believe in political correctness. And whether it's a Republican or a Democrat in office, we're going to call it straight down the line as we see it. And we do think that the Democrats, Biden, the administration, is doing a particularly poor job. Now, our
Mhm.
audience is great, largely made up of MAGA people, conservatives and
Yes.
patriots. and people who want the best for our country. So we're very fortunate in that. But every week at 3 p.m. Eastern Time
Yeah.
on Facebook Live, Our Urban Story, we do it. And we discuss the issues of the day. We
Yes.
discuss the incompetency of Kamala Harris, the VP. I mean, she's really out of her depth. And it
Yes.
should be obvious by now to even Democrats that she's in over her head. And Biden is the worst president in recorded history, as far as I know.
Yeah.
So these are things that you don't hear a lot of Black people talking about it because
Right.
we have been trained, if you will, to just vote and support Democrats. But in
Right.
order to improve this country, we feel that it is imperative that we speak the truth. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. I
So
think she's something. Yeah.
yeah, so let me follow up on that with speaking the truth in this country. I know that both of you, when I follow you on social media, on Facebook, especially, you guys are out in New York City. You are hitting those streets hard. You are educating. You are
Yes.
informing. You are engaging. And Barbara, I'll never forget one of the first times we talked. You talked about how mothers in the city were more worried about what they had on and their eyelashes than they were about their kids and the school board and what was being infiltrated in the school systems in New York City. Can you speak more
Absolutely.
to that?
Well, I try to encourage the mothers to be very involved.
Mm-hmm.
I tell them, and sometimes I'll just walk up to a group of them. I don't know them, they don't know me, but I'll introduce myself and I will tell them and remind them their children will not be children all of their lives, and their children need them to be more active.
Mm-hmm.
I tell them that as a single mother, my priority was making sure that every teacher, every principal knew that my children were cared for. I
Mm-hmm.
went to PTA meetings even though I worked 2 full-time jobs.
Mm-hmm.
My children became a priority. We tried to encourage young mothers to do the same thing, to do even more. Go to the meetings, be involved in your child's education. The eyelashes and all of that is not as important as
Mm-hmm.
laying a foundation for your children to be able to be productive, positive members of society.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this.
Yes.
Do you think with the CRT and transgender infiltration in our schools, do you think it could have been prevented if there would have been more parental involvement?
Yes. Yes. I also remind parents that they have a right
Mm-hmm.
to demand education, a logical, pure, and honest education for their children because they pay the salaries
Mm-hmm.
of those employed in the public school system.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
remind them of that.
Do you also think
But
that?
what they're trying to do,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, 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 you go ahead.
Well, I was also going to
Go
say
ahead.
the pandemic really
Yes, yes, yes,
exposed what was already happening in the schools since what, the 1970s, really, if
right.
you really look at history. And
Yes,
the pandemic exposed, especially in Loudoun County, Virginia, and Fairfax County, Virginia, it
right,
exposed in all the bigger schools and all those in Rhode Island. Remember Ramona? Those teachers coming out and
Yes.
just
yes,
talking about, let's fight this. And even if I lose my job, it will be a fight worth fighting for. I mean, she got basically put in teacher jail. And
yes.
Mm.
so, as you have been speaking to your audiences, and I know, Barbara from Harlem, you are on the road. You and Bebe are
I
hitting
love
the
it.
road and you are speaking and you are just telling it. You are at the forefront in the conservative movement and the MAGA movement. But what are you finding outside of New York? What are you finding in other places that you are traveling to?
Basically the same attitudes. It's a very sad state of affairs when you know more about a cell phone or game than you know about children's education.
Mm.
That's very sad to me. So we just take time we give them materials, we give them the Constitution, we give them the Bill of Rights. We ask them to read these things to acquaint themselves with their responsibility as citizens of America.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we emphasize how important it is for them to be involved in their children's education.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the thing about it is that we've been received very warmly by all of them because it seems as if no one has taken the time to take them aside like
Mm-hmm.
we do. We've never been rejected by any of them.
Mm.
And
You know,
Eden,
I need.
Eden, I just want to say this.
Sure.
I don't think, thank you. I don't think parents personally could have prevented it because the teachers union is a Marxist organization. They're leftist. So I think they would have tried to creep it into the agenda anyway. But if parents had a heads up and more parents were involved, I don't think it would have exploded.
Amen.
The critical race theory and the transgender agenda the way it did.
Right.
But thankfully, parents are now more alert and more aware, and we can stem the tide at this point.
Absolutely.
Roll it back.
And I love what Governor DeSantis has done. I love
yes,
what he's done.
Yes. I posted that on my Instagram page today as he was signing the bill. July 1st, it is official. You do not use that terminology. That will not be accepted in the schools.
That's right.
Oh my goodness. Now, can every other state get on board, please? Florida is America. I don't know what the rest of America is doing, but Florida is the real America.
That's right. They're leading the way. I'm so proud of him.
Mm-hmm. So you guys remember, I was on the campaign trail. I did the primary for North Carolina State House. And I will tell you, 125 miles of door knocking from Cedar Point to Cedar Island. And I will tell you, the Department of Education, Board of Elections, and everybody involved during that time period, I was talking with parents, and then I would go to our GOP meetings. I would go to our Tea Party meetings. I would go to all the group meetings.
Wow.
But there was such a divide.
Right.
The door knocking, parents would tell me one thing. All these important meetings were telling me another. And I finally said to these people, do you realize that CRT and the transgender agenda is here? It is in our backyard. And you can preach all day long that it's not here. It is here. I had teenagers that my husband and I mentor, and they said, Miss Eden, why is my science teacher telling me that a fish, when it dies, it becomes transgender?
Oh my God.
Really?
Wow.
Yes. So there's another aspect to that whole parental role.
Yes.
And there's a whole other aspect to engaging your local officials, to engaging your state officials, because at the bottom line is, they may say, oh, no, it's not here. But at the end of the day, you know what? We, the people, put them in office. We tell them what we want and how it's supposed to go. Not them tell us.
That's right.
No authoritarianism.
Yes.
So,
and see,
go ahead.
No, and that needs to be emphasized over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
What
we need is more of you down here. We need more people down here like you talking to these parents, because at the end of the day, these parents are living in their beach world. No offense to the beautiful beaches of North Carolina, but at the end of the day, I'm seeing two different stories, and there's not a meeting in the middle of that understanding of those stories. And I have so many parents that I talk to that said, how my daughter's being bullied. And then I have other students from other schools telling me other stories. And what's with these transgender students going to school being a cat and a dog and an animal?
Wow. That
You
is
know,
bizarre.
you know how Matt Walsh was talking about what is a woman on Daily Wire? I'm going to throw in a plug for
Yes.
him.
Yes.
And he talked about that. And I've heard it through the grapevine that there are kids that are showing up as animals, and it's a part of this cult. So
Wow.
what do we do, Barbara? What do we do? What is a rule in your playbook or a tool in your toolkit that you can tell our audience at Defenders Live, which is all over the country, but based out of Raleigh, North Carolina, where the General Assembly sits? What can you tell them to say, this is what we need to do to take back our country?
That's a big one. There are so many things, but let me just say this. Many of our churches have failed us. They have failed America. They have failed to teach our parents how to be parents. They have failed to emphasize the founding of this country. We were founded on Judeo-Christian values, ethics, and principles. Mm-hmm. We've gotten away from that. When the prayer came out of school, the guns went in. When the prayer came out of school, these heathens went in. And they're trying to pervert our children, turn them into subhumans, because they are created in the image of God. And these godless heathens hate God, hate everything about God. And that's why they come up with all of these wild theories. They're out to destroy, not to build. And every parent should be alarmed. Every parent must be informed and go to these school boards and say, you will not do this to my child.
I think part of the agenda, it's really, it's political. It's fought out in the political field, but it's really spiritual.
It is.
I believe that the left in this country is in rebellion against the God of the Bible.
Yes.
God said God is not the author of confusion.
Right.
One of the things that's problematic about the transgender is that it promotes, if you will, confusion.
Yes.
I mean, for a boy to come to school dressed as a cat, it's causing confusion, and that's what they want. If you destabilize a country like Black Lives Matter tried to do, also it's founded by Marxists and Antifa, then it's easier to control that society.
Right.
As opposed to people who are following Judeo-Christian values. Now, some people may not be religious, right? And I understand that. But this is how the country was founded.
That's right.
And John Adams, our second president, said the Constitution is only for a moral and religious people. It is unfit for any other type of government. I'm paraphrasing at the end. Right. So I think the parents need to return to basics.
They do.
Right? Teaching their children basic principles, affirming their gender, because they're tomboys. I mean, if there were tomboys in the 70s with this going on, they would have turned us into transgender. Oh, you're really a boy. You want to be a boy. I mean, they've taken us to an extreme.
Yes.
This is not science-based. This is propaganda promoted by the media and Hollywood. And I would also add in the educational system as well.
Definitely.
This is not organic. This is not natural.
And it's not scientific.
It's not scientific at all.
No science.
Right. No, I agree with you. I completely agree with you. At the end of the day, it's still big government, big media, and really trying to dominate and take the consistent content of what they are putting out to all the parents and to across the nation, into the social networks. The social networks, I think, are really honestly the downfall to what's happening to our children. They are glued to their phones. They do not know how to carry on in a conversation. And then they're being sucked in to this cult when they are feeling low about themselves and they are not getting that parental affirmation or that faith affirmation. And so they're being drawn into a cult on their phones through social media.
Yes.
And Eden, I would say, like you mentioned, Florida.
Yeah.
Florida represents the majority of us, of
Yes.
the vast majority of Americans, right?
Right.
Transgenderism is in a different world. You go out into the real world, you see men and women, it's pretty normal. But what has happened is between Hollywood, the media, the Department of Education, our government, all that, pushing this
Yes.
transgender agenda. And to
Mhm.
your point, these kids are caught up in all the social media. That's why it's on in our faces. Otherwise, it's about 1 to 2% of the population. And again,
Yes.
it's not based on science. It's a dysphoria of sexual confusion. And so they're hyping it up. And meanwhile, Americans are worried about paying $5 to $6 for gas. We're
Right.
Right.
concerned about not having food on our shelves and baby formula. And the Biden administration and the media, Hollywood, they're focused on LGBTQ plus.
Yes.
Yes.
We're trying to survive out here. They
Yeah.
do not represent the majority of
No,
America.
they don't.
They control most of our institutions, right? But they do not control us. And that frustrates them greatly. So they're trying to push something that's not natural and it's not organic.
Absolutely.
Right.
Period.
And that's where our voices need to be louder for those who are not listening in the back. Listen up in the back. We're coming. We are fighting, and we're not going to give up until
Amen.
until all of this, the LGBTQ X, Y, and Z is what I call it, is out of here, because
Absolutely.
I am sick and tired of it infiltrating in our homes, in our schools, in our churches. I heard today that the Methodist Church is splitting right down the middle because of the LGBTQ push. The push, the push, the push. But my bigger question is, and I realize we are coming up on the time, but my bigger question is, follow the money.
Yes.
Who's getting the money?
Absolutely.
Who's getting the money
right.
out of all of this?
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. Follow the money. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it is really corrupted, in my opinion, the scientific community.
Mhm.
Surgeries are being performed on teenagers when really it should only be for adults. If you've made up your mind, you know you want to do this.
Yes.
But to push this on teenagers who are still learning about life, learning about themselves,
Yes.
learning about who they are, to push it on vulnerable teenagers, particularly those who may be confused, maybe lonely, depressed.
Yes.
This is outrageous.
Absolutely.
And I truly believe the transgender agenda has harmed the homosexual community.
Yes, it has.
It was
Yes.
a while for Americans to, okay, I don't agree with it, but 2 consenting adults. But with the
Right.
transgender agenda, putting drag queens in our schools,
No.
really pushing this aggressively on our children, it has
Mhm.
harmed the homosexual community. It's caused confusion, and we will fight against particularly the transgender part of it.
Amen.
It is a disgrace.
It is.
Barbara
And it's
from
unnatural.
It is.
Yes.
It is. On that note, I'm going to do 2 things. Barbara from Harlem and Bebe Reid, thank you for being here on Defenders Live. I have a gut feeling you guys are going to be coming back very soon for part 2, because we are just scratching the surface to save
Yeah.
America and take America back.
Yes.
The best way to reach Barbara from Harlem is go to barbarafromharlem.com, all spelled out. Author
Yes.
of Escaping the Racism of Low Expectation, and join them on Saturdays for our urban story, for their radio show from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We love you guys. Thank you for joining Defenders Live.
Thank you so much,
Thank
and we
you.
love you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eden.
Appreciate it.